The ground shudders, not from an earthquake, but from the impact of 50,000 hooves beating in unison. It is June, 451 AD, on the Catalonian plains of Gaul. Attila the Hun, the man the terrified church calls the Scourge of God, has arrived to break the spine of the West. He does not bring diplomacy, he brings fire. The air tastes of sulfur and wet ash. Through the gray smoke, the Hunnic cavalry appear only as silhouettes, their composite bows creaking under tension. A heavy, rusted iron sword, legend says the sword of Mars itself, rests across Attila's saddle. It is the motif of his reign, cold iron that claims gold. Rome is already kneeling, bleeding out in the mud, but records suggest a deeper mystery. Why would a conqueror who demanded the world suddenly halt his advance before the final prize? And what unseen force could terrify a man who frightened the gods themselves? Even a god of war can bleed. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The retreat from the Catalonian plains is not an escape. It is a relocation of hell. The Hunnic army flows back toward the Danube like black sludge, a migrating city of intent that drags the broken body of Europe behind it. For the thousands of captives pulled from the smoldering ruins of Gaul and northern Italy, the world has shrunk to the width of a wagon wheel's track. The air is thick with the smell of fermented mare's milk, unwashed wool, and the copper tang of old blood. They cross the Alps, not as conquerors, but as cattle. In the vast, flat expanse of Pannonia, modern Hungary, the Roman eagle holds no authority. Here, the stone logic of the empire dissolves into the fluid brutality of the steppe. Status is dismantled with terrifying efficiency. A senator is worth less than a blacksmith. A bishop is valued only for the ransom his church might pay. They are stripped of their silks, dressed in rough skins, and given new designations based on utility, not lineage. The Scourge does not build stone prisons because he does not need them. The geography itself is the wall. The endless flat horizon offers nowhere to hide. The silence of the captive is the loudest sound in the camp. Inside the wooden capital, a sprawling complex of timber and intricate carving, the institutional control becomes absolute. Attila does not govern with written laws, but with the terrified memory of what happens to those who disobey. He sits on a simple wooden throne, watching Roman legates tremble as they offer bags of solidi. The captives watch this transaction, their freedom weighed on scales against cold metal. There is a quiet, desperate will to resist among the prisoners, not through violence, but through the preservation of the self. They whisper Latin prayers in the dark, clutching hidden crosses, refusing to let the vast emptiness of the steppe swallow their identity. Yet, Attila offers a strange, curdled mercy. He invites defectors. He rewards competence. A Roman merchant, found by the historian Priscus, claims he is happier under the Huns than under the crushing taxes of the empire. But this mercy has a hidden price. To accept it is to admit that Rome has already fallen. To live comfortably here, one must kill the Roman within. The cage is open, but the bird is too terrified to fly. The year turns to 452 AD. The trial does not take place in a courtroom, but on the sun-baked banks of the Mincio River in northern Italy. The city of Aquileia has already been erased from the map, dug up by the roots, its stones scattered so thoroughly that future travelers will struggle to find where it stood. Now, the road to Rome lies open. There are no legions left to block the path. The condition presented to the Eternal City is binary and absolute. Submit to the fire, or vanish into the history books like the dust of Aquileia. But the air here is heavy, not just with fear, but with heat and pestilence. The summer sun boils the marshes, and a silent killer moves through the Hunnic ranks. It is not a Roman assassin. It is dysentery and malaria. Men who can ride backward while shooting a bird from the sky are doubled over in the grass, vomiting blood. The sensory reality of the camp shifts from the sharp tang of iron to the sour stench of sickness. The invincible horde is rotting from the inside out. This is the test of faith, not for the Christians, but for Attila. He has dragged his people to the edge of the world, and the world is eating them alive. The Roman Senate sends no general. They send Pope Leo I. The meeting is a study in contrasts. Attila, mounted on his dark horse, clad in leather and iron, staring down at an old man in white vestments. The atmosphere is suffocating. The Huns expect the priest to beg. They expect weeping. Instead, Leo offers a silence that rivals the grave. He brings gold, yes, but he also brings a presence that unnerves the superstitious warriors. Records suggest Leo spoke plainly. He does not threaten Attila with legions, he threatens him with the wrath of the heavens. He points to the death already spreading through the camp. He reminds the Scourge that Alaric the Goth sacked Rome and died weeks later. A crown is heavy, but a coffin is heavier. Attila looks at the open road to Rome. He looks at his dying men. He looks at the iron sword across his saddle. The trial is a test of his own myth. If he burns Rome, he loses his army to plague and gains nothing but ash. If he turns back, he keeps the gold and his power. The refusal is cold and pragmatic. There is no grand speech of mercy. He simply turns his horse. The why is resolved in this quiet pivot. It is not divine intervention that saves Rome. It is logistics and biology. The price of this mercy is immense. Rome is spared the torch, but it is stripped of its dignity. The wagon trains of gold that flow north are a confession of weakness. The Huns do not convert, they cash out. The silence that follows is not peace. It is the quiet of a victim who has paid the extortionist to leave the room. The vow of poverty taken by the church is mocked by the ransom paid to the pagan. What was meant to break the Roman spirit, the terror of the Huns, becomes their armor. They spin the story instantly. They claim it was St. Peter and St. Paul appearing in the sky, swords drawn, that terrified Attila. They convert a diplomatic purchase into a divine miracle. The discipline of the church takes the credit for the work of the plague. The lie solidifies into dogma. Rome survives, but the truth is left to rot in the mud of the Mincio. History is written by the survivors, but the bill is paid by the truth. The morning of March, 453 AD, breaks over the Hungarian plain with an unnatural quiet. The wedding feast is over. The heavy wooden doors of the royal chamber remain shut long past noon. Inside, the air is stale with the smell of spilled wine and the heavy metallic scent of stagnation. When the guards finally break the silence and force the doors, they do not find a warrior prepared for battle. They find the Scourge of God dead on his back, not a single wound on his body. The iron sword of Mars sits uselessly in the corner. The weapon that terrified Christendom could not cut the throat of a nosebleed. Attila, in a drunken stupor, has suffocated in his own blood during the night. The terror of the West has not been felled by a legionary's pilum or a divine bolt of lightning, but by a burst vein. The anticlimax is visceral. The man who burned cities is reduced to a cold, purpled corpse on a pile of furs. An empire built on terror collapses from a single burst vein. The reaction of the Huns is a wordless rite of memory that defies Roman comprehension. There are no eulogies. There are no priests chanting liturgies. The horsemen, the toughest cavalry in the known world, shear off their long hair. They take their daggers, iron blades usually reserved for enemies, and slice open their own cheeks. The logic is brutal and sensory. The greatest of warriors should not be mourned with the tears of women, but with the blood of men. They ride their horses in wild, circling patterns around the tent, singing a dirge that sounds more like a wolf's howl than a hymn. The blood runs down their faces, dripping onto the earth, baptizing the ground in a grim rebirth of loyalty. But the body cannot remain. To keep the myth alive, the man must disappear. They prepare a hidden place that no map will ever mark. Under the cover of darkness, a massive labor force of captives is moved to a bend in the Tisza River. This is not a construction project. It is a geological erasure. They dam the river. They divert the massive flow of water, exposing the wet, black mud of the riverbed. Into this pit, they lower the king. Records from the historian Priscus, passed down through Jordanes, describe a nesting doll of coffins, a final symbolic enclosure of the motif. The first coffin is gold, for the empire he took. The second is silver, for the wealth he hoarded. The third, holding the body, is solid iron, the metal of the sword, the metal of war, the element that defined his existence. He is sealed inside the darkness of the iron, trapped within the very material he used to break the world. Then the dam is broken. The water rushes back with a roar, churning the mud, sealing the grave under tons of silt and rushing current. The landscape is reborn as if he never existed, but one loose end remains. The slaves who dug the channel, the witnesses who know the location of the iron coffin, they are not released. They are slaughtered on the banks. The secret is kept by the dead, and the dead do not talk. The disintegration of the Hunnic Empire is as rapid and violent as its rise. Without the singular gravity of Attila to hold the chaos together, the centrifugal force of the tribes tears the structure apart. Within a year, at the Battle of Nidau, the sons of the Scourge turn on each other, and their vassal subjects, the Goths and Gepids, rise up to slaughter their masters. The Huns do not fade slowly into a twilight era. They detonate. The massive migrating city that dragged Europe into the mud evaporates like morning mist under the harsh sun of the steppe. The erasure is total. Unlike the Romans, who leave behind aqueducts, colosseums, and roads that scar the landscape for millennia, the Huns leave nothing. They built no stone temples. They wrote no libraries. They minted no coins to carry their faces into the future. Their legacy is defined entirely by negative space, by the cities that are no longer there, by the gaps in the census, by the silence where voices used to be. The only monument to the most terrifying man in history is the fear he left in the ink of his enemies. The witnesses retreat into whispers. The chroniclers in the monasteries of Gaul and Italy stop writing about the present threat and start mythologizing the past. Attila ceases to be a man of flesh and blood who died of a nosebleed. He becomes a theological abstract, a monster sent by God to punish a sinful world. The reality of his court, the logistics, the diplomacy, the merchant spies, is scrubbed from the record, replaced by the caricature of the barbarian at the gate. The complex human who negotiated with the Pope is buried under the legend of the beast. And what of the motif, the iron sword of Mars? It remains down there, somewhere beneath the rushing waters of the Tisza River. It is trapped in the dark, rusting inside the iron coffin, slowly consumed by the very elements it sought to conquer. The weapon that threatened to decapitate the West is now just oxidizing metal in the mud. The ground that shuddered under 50,000 hooves in Act 1 is now still. The smoke has cleared. The Pannonian grass grows tall and indifferent over the secret grave, waving in the wind, hiding the gold and the iron alike. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. The river keeps its secret, but the water still tastes of iron.